Hey up, it's Steve from that old Yorkshire geek, and it's time to review the latest episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This is Season 3, Episode 6, The Saylat Who Ate Its Tail. Pretty good episode, to be completely honest, although there are, I do have some notions about it. But this is a Captain Kirk episode, and he is Captain Kirk in this, although technically he holds the rank of Lieutenant Commander. I think I finally worked out this rank stripes on the uniforms. But anyway, yes, so it's a very good episode. Not quite as good as last week's, in my opinion, but still pretty good. Although it does, again, like a lot of modern Star Trek does, it does, borrow heavily from other franchises, which we'll get to as we go through the episode. But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe, share the videos, drop a comment, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed already. Explore the description for links for stuff like merch and my books and all that stuff, and become a member of the YouTube channel, and then you'll get early access videos and exclusive videos and stuff like that. Right, so let's get on with this, shall we? So we will fire out the episode. Spoilers ahead, by the way. We're going to go through the episode and I'll give you my notions about it as we go. Right, so off we go. There you go. We see, first thing, we had the, previously on Star Trek Strange New Worlds and all that, but now we're with Lieutenant Commander Kirk, who is the first officer of the USS Farragut. So there we go, first officer's personal log, stardate. He doesn't know the stardate, which is a weird thing for me to hear him say, but I think he's a bit bored. I think that's what they're trying to get across. And there we go, a lovely shot of the USS Farragut, which is a Bellerophon class starship. But there it is, NCC 1647. Very nice. I'm not a fan of the pylons, the nacelle pylons. They're a bit too bendy for me. There we go. There you can see them there. Look. But it's a nice ship. It's a nice ship. Would it morph into the Miranda class later? I don't know. Anyway, so they've arrived at a uninhabited M-class planet that is outside Federation space, and Kirk's basically itching for some action. So here he is on the bridge of the Farragut, and we learned that the captain of this, it's not Captain Garovic, because Captain Garovic died, didn't he, a few years earlier. And now we've got Captain Varel, who is a Vulcan with mad hair. What is going on with Varel's hair? I don't know. Have we seen Vulcans with hair like this before? Maybe. Don't know. But usually they go for the Lego hairdo, don't they? One size fits all for Vulcans, but somehow she must be different. She's a different Vulcan, and she's risen to the rank of captain. There we can see the stripes. So I've worked it out now. In the old TOS, it was a solid band and a broken band. That was how you delineated. So you had like I think a single band was a lieutenant, a single band and a broken band were a lieutenant commander. I think below lieutenant, I don't think he had any bands at all. If you're like an ensign, I don't think he had anything. And so a double band was a full commander, and then a double band with a broken band in the middle was a captain. But as you can see, they've changed it because it's not the original series. It's not that timeline, in my opinion. I know I keep banging on about this. It's an alternate timeline. I think that they would argue differently, wouldn't they? The top knobs in Kurtzman and co. But now they've changed it. The broken band is now a thin, solid band. So there we go. So that's how we know that Kirk is now a lieutenant commander. He's been promoted from lieutenant, what we saw him in previous seasons. He's now the first officer of the Farragut. So there we go, they're heading into orbit. But Kirk wants to head down onto the attend a landing party, although they do mention a away team again in this episode, which kind of annoys me. It was landing parties back in the day, wasn't it? I know a away team covers more things because we see them later on. We see the Enterprise crew beam over to the Farragut as an away team, so I suppose it makes more sense. But the away, I'm sure the away team terminology didn't come along until Next Generation. Anyway, I could be wrong. Anyway, he wants to go down there and lead a landing party to explore the planet, but the captain thinks it's a risk, and now Kirk, I don't like this bit, he kind of argues with the captain on the bridge, which is a no-no, isn't it? You don't do that. We're always seeing in Star Trek captains, we see when it does happen, which is rarely, a captain of a ship taking if they get into an argument with their first officer, they take him aside and say, do not argue with me on the bridge in front of the crew. That's what he's doing here. But anyway, suddenly something does something to the planet. Not exactly sure what. It doesn't really explain it, I don't think. Some form of energy beam. Hang on. There we go. Hits the planet. Rips it asunder for reasons. And then suddenly all communications are out, and the captain's injured, because all hands brace for impact. There we go, the ship's all blowing up. The captain's injured, and Kirk is now in command. And there we go, he wakes up. And he says, something is jamming our comms, and he says, oh, it's that, and we don't see what it is, because then we get the opening titles. So here's the Farragut, all pretty bashed in from all the rubble and debris from Helicon Gamma. That's the name of the planet, by the way. The uninhabited M-class planet, which is not M-class anymore, is it? So it's pretty battered, because I think all systems failed. But here comes the Enterprise. Here it comes, just warps in. I hate this. I hate the way they depict warp drive in new Star Trek. Look, it's just there. It might as well just pop into existence. I know it's dropped out of warp, but don't do it so suddenly. I don't like it. In classic Star Trek, particularly in the Berman era of Star Trek, when a ship dropped out of warp, it didn't just stop on a dime, did it? It used to drop out of warp and and then glide, didn't it? Gracefully. I hate this way. It just don't like it. Anyway, whatever. I'm sure somebody's going to say now, oh, we saw it in episode whatever of whatever Berman era Star Trek, we saw a starship do that. I'm sure it looks like that from certain perspectives. But I don't like it. I just think it's ugly. But whatever. Anyway, so the Enterprise is here. I'm waffling again. And here it is. It's going to take. It was phasing some of the bigger blocks, protecting the Farragut with its shields. But and then here comes the rescue team beaming over, all 5 of them. I don't know how many crew is on the Farragut, by the way. Can't be that big, because we learn that most of the crew get beamed over to the Enterprise. There's just a skeleton crew left. Even most of the bridge crew's gone. Anyway, there we see that fella who's not well. So they're heading to the bridge to see what's going on. There we go. Captain Farrell's injured, but they're going to see to her. And they beam most of the crew over to the Enterprise. So anyway, they head to the bridge. There we are. Meet acting Captain Kirk. Comms are still down, but Uhura sorts it out. She says she can get a line of sight signal through to the Enterprise. So that's what they're going to do. Tells him that a huge ship appeared and blew up the planet and knocked all their comms down, and then just buggered off again. So anyway, so they're evacuating the ship and they're going to tow it away. But then suddenly, the ship that we come to know as the scavenger ship appears. It's huge. This huge ship with like a big skull on the front of it, with teeth and stuff. I don't know if it's supposed to look like something we've seen before. I don't know. It reminds me of something and I can't think what. Here it comes, and the Enterprise starts taking pot shots at it with their phasers. There we go. But it gets drawn inside. There we see the Enterprise getting pulled inside the scavenger ship, and it warps out of there. It ignores the Farragut and warps out of there. Right, so they've got to find out a way now to rescue everybody on the Enterprise. Meanwhile, inside the scavenger ship, see the Enterprise all bound up in all these vines. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It shows it all entangled in all this stuff, this paraphernalia. We'll call them tentacles, maybe. And we learn that there's other parts of other ships floating about inside as well, Klingon and other stuff. But we see all this stuff around the Enterprise, but we're really only interested in one of them, which is what they call the umbilical. So I don't know why they've got all this, and it doesn't tell us how it gets rid of all these. Energy is being drawn from the Enterprise. It's losing power, so they've got to find a way to, get out of there, essentially. So that's what they're going to do. Meanwhile, Kirk has got to try and find a way to rescue everybody on the Enterprise. They've seen it as part of a Klingon ship. So the scavenger ship is built up from lots of different technologies from all over the quadrant. They've got to get the Farragut to warp, and Scotty's saying he can't really do it, but he's going to say, well, you're going to have to. It's where we learn about the umbilical that's attached to the Enterprise. There it is. Don't know about all the other stuff, but there's just that one that we've got to worry about. That's the one that's drawing energy from the Enterprise. Scotty is on the Farragut, obviously trying to get the warp drive working and all that stuff. But he keeps arguing with Kirk. Another thing I'm not a fan of. Not just disagreeing with him, proper arguing with him. But not shouting and having a slanging match, but having a proper argument with him. I still don't like that Scotty in the original series, proper Star Trek, is 10 years older than Captain Kirk. Obviously the Scotty in this is not 10 years older than this Captain Kirk, is he? Acting Captain Kirk. Again, it's a different dimension, or whatever you want to call it, timeline. Anyway, so we keep switching backwards and forth between the ships, kind of confusing a little bit, but they can't communicate between, all comms is down, and even the communicators, all that is not working. But Pellier's had an idea. She's going to basically rip all the copper wiring. Is the copper wiring on the Enterprise? I thought it were, I don't know, optical data networks, or is that just from Next Generation? But anyway, going to rip all the copper wiring out, because she's going to use antiques that she's got in her collection, because she's been around for 5,000 years. We learned she's 5,000 years old, by the way. And she says, oh, I'm glad I lived through the 1980s. So this is where she's going to bring out the old telephone. Anyway, so here's a squad looking at the umbilical. Suddenly we see what here looks like a Big Daddy from Bioshock. It kind of reminds me of a Big Daddy. An alien working on the umbilical. And we learn that phasers don't work on them, because they've got some... does it show it? They've got some technology that absorbs the phaser fire. Anyway, so they've got to retreat. One of the crew is injured. Anyway, they get the ship up to warp 7, the Farragut. They get it up to warp 7, but the warp, it breaks down. But they get past the scavenger ship, but the warp drive breaks down, and they end up being dead in space. There we can see on that graphic, the scavengers are heading for Sullivan's planet, which has 150 million people living on it, but they're a pre-warp civilization, so they can't warn them because of the Prime Directive. So they've just got to try and stop them, stop the scavenger ship from getting there. Anyway, so there we go. So they're dead in space now, but the scavenger ship is catching up to them. But they've got to try and find a way to make the Farragut appealing to the scavengers, because that's the reason why it were left behind in the first place, because the Farragut's that banged up. It was of no interest to the scavengers. So they've got to find a way, and they learn that they're after a certain min. Their engines run on, I've forgotten, aldanium. They mention it, but I can't remember what it is. So they've got to find a way to make it more appealing to them, as though their ship runs on that is it aldanium, something like that. If it comes up in the subtitles, we'll know, won't we? So that's what they're going to do. But Captain Kirk's struggling with command here. I'm not sure the Shatner Captain Kirk would struggle with command, but he says, I need to clear my head, and he storms out off the bridge, and they're saying, oh, he's showing signs of stress. under command, and we may have to remove him and all that, but obviously they don't. And Spock steps up essentially as first officer and goes and consoles the captain. Here we go, they're firing the phasers at the big daddies, which is what I'm going to call them. You see, they've got these glowing things. This absorbs the phaser fire, so that doesn't damage them. Anyway, they escape. They get into a galley. I think it's port galley, which is like 10 forward, isn't it, on the Enterprise? The port galley. It's the bar area, isn't it, that we've seen before. They get in there, but the crew person that's with them is dead. Anyway, the big daddies are trying to smash their way in. And I thought they were going to develop, because they learned that the phasers don't work because of this technology these aliens have got. And what the aliens are firing, what killed the crew person, is like they said it's like a bullet, not like a phaser. I thought they were going to try and use some sort of projectile weapon against them, but they don't. But they use fire. They get some liquor and throw it at them and set them on fire, which they don't seem to like. It kind of puts them off a bit, but whatever. Give them a chance to escape. So here we are in Pellia's quarters. See, she's got the massive quarters on the Enterprise. You see she's got a jukebox and a Andy Warhol style painting. Maybe it is an Andy Warhol painting, you never know. And other stuff, some Japanese armour, etc. And this is where she's going to look for her telephones that she needs. We'll state-of-the-art communications. We need to rip all the copper wiring out of the Enterprise. This is how they're going to let the bridge communicate with the starboard and port thrusters, because that's how they're going to get out of there, using the thrusters, because they're chemically fired, and they can fire them from there. That's what they're going to do. Anyway, so here's Spock giving some wisdom to Captain Kirk, acting Captain Kirk, and it's where we get the title from, because Kirk says he's reminded of a story his mother used to tell him about the dog that caught the car. Dogs like to chase cars, and when the dog caught the car, it didn't know what to do with it, and that's what he feels like. Does Kirk? It doesn't know what to do. He's at a loss. Is Kirk? And Spock says, "Oh, there's a similar story on Vulcan, the sailor who ate its tail." So that's where the title comes from. Anyway, so it basically, gives Kirk some pearls of wisdom and gives him the confidence to carry on. So that's what they're going to do. And off he goes back onto the bridge. There we go. Glad to see you back. See, they're all happy he's back, and he starts barking orders, so to speak, but in a nice way. And he's had an idea. Before they were mentioning, it was kind of like we saw Kirk at the end of Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, when he'd won, but he'd lost Spock, and he felt old, and he felt lost because he'd lost Spock, and he said, he'd always got out of these tricky situations and patted himself on the back for his ingenuity, but but losing Spock, it made it all worthless. And that's kind of how he feels. But before that, in this, he said he's been flying by the seat of his pants and basically using luck to get further. But anyway, so there we go. Aldentium, there we go. Aldentium. I was close. I knew it began with Ald. They're going to make the scavengers think that the Farragut runs on Aldentium, and that's they're going to use with, I don't know, stuff. They're going to use technobabble to make the nacelles look as though they've got Aldentium in them. And it'll be a banquet, there we go, a banquet that's impossible for these scavengers to ignore. So that's they've got their plan. That's their plan. Plan gets a little crazy, and Scotty's not going to enjoy it. Meanwhile, Pike and La'an are still fighting these scavengers, these two scavengers that are on the Enterprise. And we see that she smashes that glowing thing, the thing that absorbs the phaser fire on one of them. So she's fighting away. Pike's fighting with the other one. Here we're going to see her shoot this. I think she vaporises it. I think. Hang on, is it going to show it? Yes, she did. She vaporised it because Pike had said set phasers to kill. So she vaporises that one because she'd broken the thing. But the other one, his crystal thing hasn't broken. But she fires at him, there we go, and it makes him run away. And they escape. But it is injured, is the other one. It is injured. He ends up, staggering off. Anyway, so they survive to live another day. There they are using the old telephones. Hang on, is it going to show it now, actually? Because I'm sure she plugs, there we go, the copper wire. And I'm sure she plugs a USB lead into this. It's going to show it. It is, is it? Oh, no, it ain't. No, it is a telephone. It's a telephone connector. I thought when I first saw it, I thought it was a USB lead, but it's a telephone connector. Because she said the 1980s, and I thought they didn't have USB leads in the 1980s. But anyway. So they're through to the bridge. There we go. The phone rings. Hello, it's for you, Lieutenant. So here we go. Starboard thrusters are ready, even though it's on the left-hand side of the screen. Does that work? I'm going by the side of the... Because we're looking at... Yeah, I think it does work, doesn't it? I think it does work. If we're going the other way, if we're behind Ortegas, yes, he is starboard, isn't he? Off PC. And on the port side, there we go, is number one. So she's basically going to be telling them how much thrust to give onto the thrusters on either side of the ship. So that's the plan. Right, the Farragut is there with the scavenger ship arrives, and it extends its tentacles to grab them. But they've got impulse power, so the Uhura's piloting the ship, by the way. There we go, that's what they used, antiprotons, to make it look as though they were using aldantium. Have I got that right? I've forgotten already. There we go, so they're going to outmaneuver the tentacles. There we go, get a good look, don't we? Yeah, of this ship. There we go, see, it's got this skull shape and big teeth and that. Why? Don't know. Because we learn by the end, that the origins of this, maybe not the ship, but the crew of the ship. But I assume at some point Trek Yards will do a detailed breakdown of this ship. If we get a good look at, I'm sure they'll be able to get a good look at the various parts. Because it's been built up over the centuries from other ships, from other races. Anyway, the Farragut outmaneuvers the tentacles and detaches its nacelles. Have I missed it? Here we go. Detaches its nacelles. There they go. And the nacelle, I'm not exactly sure how this works, I don't know. But the nacelles impact into the scavenger ship, do that, and make the scavenger ship power down for somehow. I don't know how, it didn't explain how that were going to work. And if it did, I missed it. But it does, it works. The scavenger ship powers down. But obviously they're on board the ship trying to get power back up. But they've a window now to get out. So anyway, the Enterprise is going to try and get out now. They make the umbilical detach by putting baryon particles into the fuel that it's draining. So it's draining the ship of deuterium, which is the fuel. And they're putting baryon particles into sour the milk, as Scotty might say, or LaForge. So the umbilical detaches and get everything else as well. Remember, we're all wrapped up. But anyway, so they're trying to fly it. She loses control of the port thrusters, so instead of just using the port thrusters, she goes and depressurizes an airlock on the port side, and that there we go. That allows the Enterprise to move in that direction. There it goes. Look, out of the maw. I'll call it a maw. But I don't think we saw all the other tentacles and stuff that were wrapped around it. Vines come away. I don't know, but anyway. So they get out. Kirk orders to fire phasers at the alien ship, but it says it's resistant to our weapons. We see the tentacles are resistant to our weapons. So it fires 3 photons into the mouth of the ship. So in it goes. And makes it blow up from within. There we go. Would that? I don't know. It worked. It worked. I will get another cool look as its school face and all that. And it blows up. And then they're all, yay! It's blown up. But then Spock says there's life signs, detecting life signs. And how many? 7,000 life signs. But there's something peculiar about these life signs on this ship. Pike and La'an find the other scavenger was died from its wounds. He takes the helmet off. Takes the helmet off, and it's a human. It says all the life signs are humans. What was 7,000 humans doing on that ship? Well, we're going to find out in a minute. Right, it says, can you get us a clear image on the debris? And they just focus on one piece, which gives them all the answers they need of all that stuff that's out there. Anyway, we'll get a closer look. An American flag. So it's got a Starfleet chevron there, but I think is that an Earth logo in the middle of it? I don't know, but you see that there it says XCV, XCV 100, maybe. XCV, that was the what the Enterprise ring ship. That was an XCV 330, wasn't it? So it's obviously from that time period. So now we learn it. It's a human crew on a ship they've become the scavengers, and Uhura goes digging in the historical records, and in the mid 21st century, shortly after the Third World War, but before first contact with the Vulcans, about 2053, wasn't it? Because in First Contact, data says approximately 10 years after the end of the Third World War, wasn't it? So anyway, in the 2050s, they built a ship that were going to go out and explore the galaxy and find strange new worlds, do all that cool stuff. So they built a ship, filled it full of their best and brightest from around the world, and they were never heard from again. It were lost, never heard from again. So obviously something happened, and they became the scavengers. Kind of reminds me a bit of what happened when the Enterprise NX-01 went into the Delphic Expanse, and all those ships had to do all the things that they didn't want to do to survive, and it looks like the scavengers did that, because back then it was a bit more Wild West, wasn't it, in the Alpha Quadrant, as it probably later become known. It calmed down with the formation of the Alliance and the Federation, which came later, didn't it? But I'm guessing that they had the struggle, so they'd been going around for 200 years, adding on to their ship, becoming these scavengers, becoming world destroyers, because there are all these legends from outer colonies, and even other colonies from other races of these world destroyers. At first I thought it was going to be the planet killer from the Doomsday Machine from the original series, but it didn't. It were humans that were doing everything in their power to survive, but doing the wrong things and bad things. But for some reason, earlier on in the episode, it wouldn't shoot. One of them, it picked up Pike's phaser, but it didn't shoot him. And he says, "Why didn't it kill me?" And because it hesitated. I don't know why. Because then he was saying here that they've obviously they didn't see us as humans. They just saw us as something to get more fuel or whatever, more technology. So Kirk's thinking about all those people dead, all those souls, humans dead, and basically Pike says, well, when you sit in the big chair, you've got to live with the consequences of stuff like that. But obviously you're not like them because you have empathy. They lost their empathy, even though the one hesitated from killing Pike. But anyway. And this is where he calls him. He says, "Okay, you're gonna do okay." By the way, the captain's fine. The captain of the Farragut's fine. She's going to return to duty, and they're going to tow the Farragut to the nearest starbase. Because remember, she jettisoned warp nacelles. And anyway, so he says, you'll do okay. Good night, Captain Kirk. And then the music swells. I thought they were going to do a da da da, but it didn't. It was a little bit different. But I must admit, I did get a little bit, teary-eyed, lip quivery, whatever. Even though it's not the same Captain Kirk, but it's the first time he's being called that. They called him Captain all the way through the episode, but it's the first time we hear Captain Kirk. but obviously he's still Lieutenant Commander, but for the moment he is Captain Kirk. He's the commander of the Farragut, and that's how the episode ends. There we go. A good episode. I did really enjoy it. A good exciting episode, and following on from last week's, strange new worlds. We're seeing new things, which is cool. We didn't have any love story stuff going on in this episode, really. It was just an action-packed episode, which were a lot of fun. I didn't even mind Pellier this much in this episode. I'm not a fan of Pellier, but I can't wait for it to bog off and get Scotty in charge of engineering. But they were fine in this. The telephones thing, it was fun. A little bit pointless, but they could have found another way around it, couldn't they? But anyway, so yeah, a good episode, but not quite as good as last week's. But still well worth a look. And I did like the scavenger ship. Would humans resort to stuff like that? Just destroying planets for Aldantium? Who knows? But they did in this. Right, so I would give this one an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really good. Even though the alien scavengers did look like big daddies from BioShock. But, never mind. We won't hold that against them. Right, so yeah, 8 out of 10 for that one. A good, exciting episode. I didn't mind it. So we'll leave it there. So thanks for watching, wherever you are. Look after each other, live long and prosper. And until next time, watch out for scavengers. And I'll see thee. That old Yorkshire geek with stories too.